All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's live presentation focused on what it will take to migrate your Essbase applications to Oracle Enterprise Performance Management Cloud Enterprise and determine the approach that best fits your profile. Today's presenters are Mike Colleen, Senior Vice President of Technology at Alithya, and Mija Deering, Principal Solutions Director at Alithya. We encourage attendees to submit questions in the chat, and we will try to make time near the end of the presentation today to address them. I hope everyone is as excited as we are to dive into this topic. So with that, I'll turn it over to our experts.
Thanks, Mary. Looks like we've got a few people in the lobby, so maybe you could keep an eye on that and admit them as we get a few late runners coming in. Let's go to the next slide. So good morning or good afternoon, everywhere, depending on where you are. My name is Mike Colleen. I'm a Senior VP of Technology and Strategy here at Alithya, and I'm joined by Mija Deering. I want to just spend a few minutes introducing our company and ourselves. And I think as a starting point, for both Mija and ourselves and our roles, we have been working with Essbase since the late 1990s. Going back to the days of Arbor Software, before Arbor's acquisition of Hyperion, and before Oracle's acquisition of Hyperion. We've had chances to work with numerous clients over the years on really what is this amazing, wonderful technology that's served up so many use cases over the years. My role currently with the organization is I lead our solutions team, which includes our industry verticals as well as our product center of excellence. And our number one job is to really help customers such as yourselves get a better sense of how to maximize their investments with the Oracle technology. Prior to that, I was spent close to 20 years in delivery, and I've got expertise across probably close to 350 clients during that time frame. Mija, do you want to just do a quick intro for yourself?
Sure. Good afternoon. My name is Mija Deering. I'm a Principal Solutions Director here at Alithya. As you can see from the picture, Mike and I have been working together since 1998 and actually even earlier than that, having done many implementations across my 20 plus years in the Oracle EPM space as a trainer. So I've really been very enthusiastic about working with this tool and seeing the evolution over the years.
Right. And I think, as I kind of set the stage about Alithya, the Alithya Oracle practice, our DNA is in the Essbase technology. As we started off many years ago as Ranzel and Associates, as an Arbor Essbase consulting firm, building custom solutions on top of Essbase. And then as Hyperion and Arbor merged, we transitioned to delivering packaged applications. And now to today, within the Oracle Cloud ecosystem, we're now deploying these SaaS applications. And again, I want to share that perspective is because for those of you who've either started this journey or are thinking about undertaking it, ourselves and many of our other consultants have had to kind of go through a similar experience in terms of the transition, really understanding the capabilities of Oracle Cloud, how it can help, what it can do, what it can't do, and how we get from there. Just quickly, as we look at Alithya today in our Oracle practice, we are exclusively focused on Oracle, delivering cloud applications for EPM, which all in addition to ERP, supply chain, HCM, offering advisory services. And then we also work in the technology stack with hosting, OCI, and analytics and database. But I want to get to the meat of our presentation with that. Let's go to the next slide. So before we kind of get into it, and I'll talk about the agenda, we did also issue a poll to get a sense of who the audience was. But as we go through the agenda today, we'll touch on our poll. We'll get very quickly into the evolution of Essbase, the sort of use cases we've seen customers take on over the years. And then we'll talk specifically about why many of our clients are making the move to EPM Cloud and what some of the other cloud options available for Essbase are. We'll wrap it up with some of the considerations that are necessary for migration approach and leave a call to action at the end. As a reminder, we do have a subsequent webinar scheduled for, I believe, April 5th. They'll talk a little bit more about some of the EPM Cloud packaged applications that are potential targets for Essbase as well. But for this session, we're going to talk specifically about more of a lift and shift approach and what's necessary to get you to the cloud. Quickly, in terms of our poll, if I look at our audience, and none of this is surprising, pretty good distribution between business and IT users. One of the things that I'm not surprised about is that the majority of folks on this call have been using Essbase for over 10 years. And that's pretty typical for long-term customers. And then from a user community standpoint, we see some pretty large deployments. I'm wondering if anybody is still using the legacy concurrent licensing model, which was one of the very attractive features of Essbase going back to the late 90s. And then from a version perspective, still have a couple of folks on the 11.1x series, but a few of you made the jump to 11.2. And in the 17% other, not sure if anyone's on 21C yet, but we certainly can dive into that a bit more. All right, let's go to the next slide. So I think with this, I'm going to turn it over to Misha for just kind of a quick overview of the sorts of use cases we anticipate we're seeing in the field that date back to the early days of Essbase.
Thanks, Mike. So back in 1992, when Essbase was first released into the marketplace, that Mark and I have been working together since the late 90s. And we saw some of the use cases really being around financial reporting, management reporting, maybe segment reporting. And back in the day, really customers had, in terms of getting data into the application, was traditionally a flat file, which was text or CSV, using Essbase load rules, and or using the Excel add-in. Remember the old lock and send that could be done manually or through the usage of VBA. And then to get data out of the application and system, it was traditionally just the Essbase Excel add-in, again, now known as SmartView, which was used also for ad hoc analysis. Or we had developed custom retrieval sheets and more packages, again, using the VBA that was available to the system. One of the things we saw was an emergence of other use cases, and that might have been really around expense allocations, perhaps headcount and salary planning. We saw the emergence of IT cost and shared services allocations, budgeting and forecasting. And then even some of the other kinds of use cases we saw that was just very arbitrary, like fantasy sports optimization, which we saw for a big sports organization. We saw FX transparency requirements, price volume mix analysis for CPG firms. Actually, we saw customers using Essbase for consolidation or profitability or customer metrics, billings, backlog. So really a whole host of use cases. And Essbase essentially became, the equivalent of a Swiss Army knife for an organization because it was so flexible and easy to deploy within the organization and was very useful. With the continued adoption of Essbase, we also saw customers creating new cubes, again, to support those ever-changing and additional use cases. But with that, we saw an increasing demand to extend capabilities, really around integration of data as well as metadata. We saw increasing demand for reporting capabilities, as well as leveraging pre-built capabilities. Wouldn't it be nice if Essbase had pre-built capabilities? And oftentimes what we saw were the customers were bolting on these additional capabilities, and sometimes it was for an additional cost. So perhaps you were seeing customers then leveraging the use of FDM or FDM-EE to do integrations or integration services or Essbase Studio, perhaps using EPMA or DRM to support some of the metadata. And then if again, additional ETL tools such as ODI or Informatica. And we also saw customers developing perhaps custom API-based programs to support their environment or leveraging the use of a data warehouse or data mart to support some of the solutions. And that's really on the integration and data sourcing side. On the reporting side, we saw really increasing demand for the usage of financial reports. To do the standardized formatted reporting, we saw the usage of web analysis or Hyperion Analyzer in the day for doing some of those dashboards and visualizations, and then also growing adoption and usage case for OBIEE and or third-party or custom solutions to help in those areas of reporting. So again, we saw the continued bolt-on of these additional capabilities to support those solutions.
I think one of the key takeaways from this as we pivot is that when we think about migration patterns for Essbase, one of the key takeaways is not only are we trying to focus and understand the profile of the cubes themselves, their nature, their purpose, but how each client has configured their integration patterns for data and master data into the cube, as well as the reporting tools for consuming out of it. And as you'll see a little bit later on, it's really the combination of those three things that helps define the profile for a customer and creates a sense of what your deployment and migration path needs to be. Usually back to you.
Yep, exactly. And so then why go to EPM Enterprise Cloud, really? So for those of you who are not familiar with that, it's really as a software as a service platform versus infrastructure as a service or remaining on-premise. Organizations who are looking to reduce hardware or infrastructure costs, cloud is a viable option, clearly. And with the SaaS subscription model, customers have access to a prod and a pre-prod environment, as well as nightly maintenance and backups that are performed automatically as part of the subscription, and access to a whole host of capabilities that we said previously on the slides were bolt-ons or add-on for additional costs. Connected EPM is the ability to access a broad range of capabilities. So those areas around consolidation, close, or budgeting and forecasting, or profitability analysis, all of that capability is part of the EPM solution, and it's built leveraging the same underlying technology, which is that multi-dimensional engine Essbase as we know it. And so it really makes the transition for customers who are using Essbase today to transition to the cloud. And it also has a similar look and feel. The EPM Enterprise Cloud is mobile and agile, so it's accessible anytime, anywhere. It's available through mobile devices as well. And it's really got greater flexibility for business users to drive change. And lastly, probably most importantly, is the continuous innovation that Oracle continues to make in its R&D in this platform in areas such as artificial intelligence and machine learning. It has the ability to deploy quarterly releases as well as monthly updates. So no longer do you have to wait for the next big release or patch available. It's automatically available, and it's done in a development or pre-prod environment first, and then it's done in the production environment subsequently. And most importantly, related to continuous innovation is really Customer Connect, where customers can share their ideas for new features, new functionality within the Oracle EPM platform. And really, it has access to product development to view those requests and enhancements, and then customers can actually go ahead and vote on it. So again, I think there's a lot of benefits then just from those things for EPM Enterprise. So it's really kind of like that new Swiss Army knife. It's a new modern Swiss Army knife with pre-purpose built-in capabilities to support all of those areas, again, that we were building additional Essbase cubes to support. And again, leveraging those common features, that same multidimensional engine, navigation flows in there to enhance user interactions, reporting and dashboards, the ability to do integrations, as well as support metadata management. So just to give you a quick view of some of those common features, the modern user interface. The data integrations are built into the solution. The reporting, the standardized reporting with enhanced charting capabilities, and also those interactive visualizations that are available within the Oracle EPM platform and available on any of those products within the Oracle EPM platform.
All right, so two key considerations here when we think about migrating and thinking about integrations and reporting. In today's world, if you have separate tools for integrations, for automation, for Essbase, for reporting, depending on your profile, there are opportunities to consolidate and rationalize all of those into one instance. The other thing that's really important besides the what is the how. Because there is one common infrastructure deployment for the SaaS applications, that means that all customers are operating in an infrastructure environment that's identical to what the Oracle developers are working on, which really gets us into this mode where as I pivot from on-premise to cloud, one of the biggest distinctions is I'm moving from an environment that's supported. And if I think across 300 clients, I might have seen over 300 different infrastructure configurations to something that's optimized. And that optimization also allows the rapid pace of innovation because as new features are created in terms of regression testing, there are fewer deployment configuration options that need to be tested. So again, those are just some of the other ancillary benefits in terms of the approach and the rationale behind cloud. Back to you, Misha.
So when we talk about free-form planning, what is it we're referring to? Well, EPM solution comes with EPM planning, which a lot of us have known has been deployed for many years now, since 2014, is really the concept of having modules, which incorporates pre-built functionality. So a lot of things that customers were building into the Essbase process are now actually available, and they can be configured by customers to kind of more suit their needs. But it has capabilities around financials, workforce, capital planning, projects, as well as strategic modeling. You can also incorporate open cubes in here. And then there's also custom. But EPM freeform really is the ability to create up to 12 open cubes. And those cubes can be BSO, ASO, or a mixture of both. Any of the BSOs are automatically hybrid BSO cubes. And it supports dimensionality that is not required dimensionality in a planning application. So it's truly free form in its sense. And then you can have up to 29 dimensions. And really the key benefit too of having free form with these open cubes is that all of the cubes can access a shared dimension library. So for those of you who are using or had used EPMA, know the concept of a shared dimension library, which I can go ahead and deploy across those 12 different open cubes. And then more importantly, it leverages the same common platform functionality that's available with EPM planning. So the concept of forms, which we can use for read or write purposes. It's got the same reporting capabilities, the calc manager, the ability to create dashboards and infolets, navigation flows. So all those things that was available in EPM planning are also available in EPM freeform. So if I don't want to go the EPM freeform option, what are my other Oracle Cloud options? And really, it's Essbase 21C. So some of you have already maybe considered or evaluated that option. And this is available on the OCI Marketplace, which is the infrastructure as a service. Now, it is a little bit more IT-centric in that IT is probably required to help support and manage the environment. So for example, if you want a future upgrade or apply new releases, that would probably be an IT department or organization that's doing that for you. But in terms of some of the pros, you know, you as a customer will have full deployment control over the cubes that govern the performance on that instance in there. And you also have the ability to create new applications as you need to, and you can retain as many archive applications. And that's one of the things that we saw in many organizations who had a proliferation of cubes in Essbase on-premises, that they were often archiving a snapshot of their Essbase cubes from year to year, and then having those available kind of at an as-needed basis. But some of the cons of Essbase 21C on the OCI Marketplace is really, it's a slightly more complex licensing than the traditional SaaS solution, because you've got a subscription-based licensing, whereas the Essbase 21C is more CPU-based. And if you need to leverage the capabilities that we talked about that were previously bolted on, like dashboards or formatted and standardized reports, there's an additional cost to purchase that capability. And that might be through OAC or FAW for some of the dashboards and visualizations, or through EPM narrative reporting. And if that's an option that you decide to go to because you have those requirements, there is a little increased security deployment consideration if you're combining the SaaS deployment as part of that solution. So when we look at really identifying the best migration path for you, these are some of the key customer attributes that we look at and we consider to provide you with a recommendation in making the move to the cloud. So we look at the Essbase footprint that you have on premise. What are the number of applications that you currently have? And what are the number of active applications versus archive? What is the frequency of new applications being created? And what are the types of applications and complexity around those processes? So for example, do you have a partitioning in there? Do you have predefined drill through reports? Do you drill through to source? So those are all kind of things that we take into consideration. What is the user and organization profile? So a lot of organizations have the motto, you know, don't fix if it's not broken. Or we have some organizations who are really seeking new ways to innovate their existing platform and the solutions and the offerings to enhance what the users can do and their capabilities to make maybe streamline processes, maybe get them to close faster. So what is their profile? Are they, you know, adaptive to change and transformative? Looking at reporting requirements, is the customer, are you guys a heavy usage of SmartView or the Essbase Excel add-in? You know, is that the common and most prolific usage of reporting, or do you have a lot of formatted and standard reports and books Do you have a need for visualizations and dashboards? And are those visualizations and dashboards interactive? So do you want users to be able to drill into them? Do you have the need for collaborative and narrative reporting, like report packages is a thing? So those are some of the kind of key considerations. And then just in terms of administration maintenance, who owns the Essbase applications? Is it finance? Is it IT? Is it jointly executed and maintained? And what's the availability of IT resources to support the environment and applications? Again, we see in many organizations that the IT resources are really not as available to support the business as rapidly and as quickly as they'd like to for some changes or business requirements that are continually to evolve. And then what's your policy around upgrades and patches, right? So those are some of the things. A key consideration is the integrations. You know, what are the source systems? What are the output files? And what are the upstream and downstream? Or do you have inter-cloud type data integrations that need to be performed? So those are some of the things. And then lastly, we really look at it from a metadata management perspective. Like, how are you doing that today? We have many customers who are just doing manual updates of outline. They don't have a lot of changes. We have a lot of organizations that have a lot of changes, or they have governance around how they're managing the metadata. And maybe it's just managed within the Hyperion ecosystem, or maybe they're actually using processes in place to govern not only the Hyperion systems and applications, but also maybe outside and the source systems or the GLs. So is there commonality across those applications, and is there data governance process in place? So these are some of the key attributes that we look at and take into consideration. So next we have just a couple of poll questions that we want to poll for the audience here and get your feedback on how many cubes you have and how many cubes do you create. So if you can just take a second to answer some of these polls, we'd appreciate that. Okay. I think that was about the last of the poll questions. So if you haven't already submitted a response.
Bijou, you want to give it one more minute, and then we'll move on with the.
Sure.
So we will play the results of this back in our next webinar. And again, one of the reasons why we're asking these questions is the responses dictate the approach to the cloud in terms of how you get there, what the right phasing needs to be, and what the right architecture needs to be to get there. And so this is a good way for all of those in attendance to start thinking a little bit about what key factors are gonna influence that approach. Bijou, why don't we move on to the next slide?
Perfect. So when we think about a crosswalk between Essbase and then what you get with Freeform, it's really kind of a marriage between Essbase capabilities and some of the planning capabilities. So we put together this little matrix that shows you, if you're Essbase, our on-premise customers, what you would be transitioning to from your on-premise to the free form. So for example, if you've got load rules, so you'd really transition and crosswalk those to data exchange capabilities that, again, are included and bundled with your subscription, or you can leverage the EPM integration agent, which will allow you to draw and pull queries directly from your source systems, or leveraging Groovy. For those of you using calc scripts, which all of us do, there's the equivalent calc manager or Groovy rules. Report scripts, we've got calc manager and Groovy rules. For those of us who did XRefs or XWrites, we have the concept of smart pushes in there. For partitioning, we've got data maps and smart push. So there is a walkthrough that we can do to show you the functionality that's available from an on-premise to the cloud-based solution in here. So if I think about the migration approaches, really what best suits your organization, again, it's based upon some of the responses in the customer profile. But if you take a lift and shift, which is just really keeping things as is, and then maybe gradually introduce cloud features, which is the focus of today. We also have customers who are doing a transformative approach where they're really converting some of their existing processes that they built into Essbase into one of those purpose-built EPM enterprise capabilities like profitability and cost management, or enterprise planning, or consolidation and close. Or maybe you're a customer who really wants to do a combination and a hybrid approach in there. So in terms of when we think about the level of effort, the lift and shift, if you are a small customer, the level of effort is a little easier if you have a few cubes, if you have structured and governed processes, if you have a consistent integration and automation process, and if you use SmartView primarily for reporting. And then if we go transition to the large end of the effort, which is maybe customers, we do have customers who have greater than 20 cubes, right? So they just kind of morphed over the time and 10, 15 plus years of using Essbase. And maybe those processes are a little unstructured, maybe some, ungoverned in there. Maybe you've got different integration and automation processes in place. Maybe there's lots of changes. And maybe you've got numerous reporting mechanisms, whether it be Hyperion using the native tools or third-party tools in there. So depending on some of that criteria is really how we would define that migration approach that is suitable for you. But regardless of hybrid or transformative approach, some of the things we ask our clients to consider is, rationalization of cubes, right? So do you have a lot of cubes that are not being used? Can they be consolidated? Is there simplification that could be done? And are there cubes that are really suited to be deployed through other EPM capabilities? So those are some of the considerations that we look at when we do recommendations for a migration approach. So so in terms of just the lift and shift, really, it's pretty simple, as we said. In step one, enable your EPM instance in which you get your prod and pre-prod instances in there. Step two, you create an application in an initial cube. And there's really an application creation wizard, which simplifies things. And then as a customer, you have the ability to import an outline or LCM of a single cube in there. And then you can go in and manually create the additional cubes and dimensions as needed. Alternatively, there is also a utility that's available, the planning application template freeform, which is accessible through SmartView. And this is where you can create your applications and all the cubes, all the dimensions, and also update your substitution variables, as well as import security. And if you wanted to, you can actually use that template to upload up to 1,000 rows of data. So that's another alternative way to create your application. And then step three is to do that, application components in there. So as I mentioned, some of the things you will have to convert, like the rules to data integration, calc scripts to rules, which is really like a copy and paste if you want to, and then converting some of those processes that are available on premise to the cloud. So like Maxell, which is your automation tool, you'd need to convert that to EPM Automate. But for the data file, you can import an export file that you've got from your on-premise applications. And if you have financial reports, you can also export them from your on-premise application and import them into the cloud. So those are really some of the key fundamental steps on the how-to. So the benefits of the approach, really lift and shift, is a quick win. So you can get to the cloud faster than undertaking a hybrid or transformative migration approach. It's a quicker ROI in there, and it really kind of minimizes the change management for users. So these are some of the key benefits that we see of migrating to the cloud. And then we did have just as our last two polling questions for you as part of this, and then we'll just kind of wrap it up. Okay. So at this point, I'm going to turn this over to Mike Kleen, who's going to provide the call to action here.
Great. Thanks, Misha. Appreciate that. We tried to pack through a lot of content in a short period of time. This session was intended to provide an overview of what sort of use cases we see our customers deploying with Essbase, what Oracle EPM Cloud, and specifically the EPM Freeform module is as a mechanism to support lift and shift for those Essbase use cases, and what are some of the key factors that you need to think about as your own organizational profile to determine the best path to get there. We've also provided a little bit of an overview of some of the steps to migrate the Essbase applications cube by cube. The reality is each customer is different. One of the offerings and the next steps that we would recommend as a call to action, and if you have any interest, please send an email to info@alithyasolutions.com, is a quick hit grounded cloud assessment roadmap, which is in a scenario where in a 1 to 2 day process, we will analyze the results of the sort of questions that we've talked about today and create forth for you a tailored plan on your best approach for getting to cloud and the pros and cons. The key takeaway here is that for certain profile customers, this will be extremely easy. For other sorts of customers, you're going to get to the point where you may need to consider some level of rationalization. And again, we want to be completely transparent from that perspective. So again, if there's any interest in this, we'll have a follow-up on that. Joe, let's go to the final slide. Next slide. So again, this was part one of our session, which was really focused on introducing those concepts. We do have a secondary session, part two, on April 5th, where we're going to talk specifically about how certain custom use cases of Essbase related to profitability, financial close, and planning can be ported to pre-built package application functionality, creating more of a transformative impact for your business. And so again, we appreciate everybody's time and hope you can join us for that. I think with that, Joey, I'll turn it back to you or Mary to wrap things up.
Thanks, Mike. We hope you gained insight from today's webinar. Don't forget to register for that next webinar in our Oracle Essbase webinar series. And please visit our website to learn more and register for our upcoming webinars. And follow us on Alithya's Digital Cafe LinkedIn account to get alerts about our upcoming webinars, events, and more. Thank you to our attendees for joining us, and thank you, Mike and Misha, for hosting today's presentation. This concludes today's webinar.